All right, this build is officially insane, bro. Officially insane. What's up, guys? War here. Welcome back to the channel. So today we are finally bringing you the Witch Infernalist demon mode meteor spam barrage, whatever you want to call it. It's just a meteor spam demon mode build for the witch, and I'm so excited to actually bring this to you. So first things first, though, I do want to give a huge shout out to I'm probably saying his name wrong, but Tsukimis. I think that's how you say his name, for the inspiration behind the build. It's an amazing build, and we've had to change some things and really break down the calculations and figure out everything that you need for this build, and it's an absolute monster when you finally get it all together. So before we get into everything, the gear, the skills, the passive tree, all that good stuff, I do want to preface by saying that this build, one, it cost me about 7 div to put together, maybe 8 div to put together. This is not a leveling build, and you cannot do this until you're level 84. I just hit 84, and there's a big reason for this. So you cannot do this build until you're level 84. I cannot preface this enough, and this is a end game build. This is not a leveling build at all. So now with that out of the way, let's go ahead and break down the build and everything that you need to do, and kind of just some calculations that you're going to get to, because there's a lot to explain, and hopefully we can get through it in a short time. So let's go ahead and go over the gear real quick and just kind of break some stuff down. So the biggest thing is we're doing demon form, and we're doing barrier evocation to spam comets. Now, before we get into the skills, let's go ahead and go do some gear. So this gear is pretty cheap in the end. I didn't spend a whole lot on this gear at all. It is really cheap, and we're only using 2 uniques in the build. So the biggest one is the Ghost Wraith Tattered Robe. So the whole idea behind this is to have the lowest amount of life that we can, the lowest amount of mana that we can, which ends up getting converted into Infernal Flame, to be able to spam our comets and keep our energy up, right? So Ghost Wraith is huge here because we are going to be capping all of our resistances, including Chaos. Chaos, I think, is just 1 off right now. But with the Tattered Robe, the biggest thing here is 60% of maximum life is converted to Energy Shield. We get a big boost to Energy Shield, and then we get some Chaos Res. Chaos Res is one of the most important pieces on here, but the 60% of maximum life converted to Energy Shield is huge. Now, you're probably asking yourself, well, War, you only have 326 life. 60% of max life converted to Energy Shield. Why don't we want to stack more life? We don't need that. We want to have the lowest amount, and I'll talk about it when we go into the passive tree, just to kind of explain it with the Ascendancy. So the next important piece, or at least the next unique, is the Ming's Heart Amethyst Ring. We want this because it's going to reduce our maximum life. It's going to give us some damage as extra chaos and some chaos res. So which is very, very important. But this helps us reduce our maximum life even further, because again, we want it to be as low as it possibly can. Now, for the rest of the gear pieces here, a lot of this is just going to vary. You want gear pieces without mana and without maximum life if you can help it. Okay, you do not want these stats. You want to avoid them at all costs. So on my gloves, the biggest thing I went for here is you can do resistances to make sure you cap your resistances. And then you can add other things. Try to get like the Energy Shield stuff, so 2 maximum and increase Energy Shield. Just a buff, because I'm level 84 and I have 6,100, almost 6,200 Energy Shield for this build. So it's very important that you guys get a lot of ES, all right? So again, we got some dexterity on here. We're going to talk about dexterity because we also have it in our amulet. Our stats, we're going to go into this right in just a second. You need to hit certain stat thresholds when we get to the skill gem, so I'll talk about that in a second. But you want to make sure you get dexterity on your gloves and your amulet to hit the 133 threshold, which I'll talk about in a sec. On your boots, high movement speed if you can, increase Energy Shield, and then all resistances. I could probably improve these boots a little bit more, but these are solid for what I have. The other ring, I still have other affixes that I can actually put on here, or prefixes, but you want a high dex roll and then huge roll to fire resistance and all elemental resistance, which is important to help cap your resistances. On your amulet, You want dexterity, a jade one preferably to help with the dex roll. Otherwise, you can get something else. Increase energy shield nodes, increase spirit because we need to have about 140 spirit for the build. Although you don't need it, but you want to get there, have dexterity rolled, and then one resistance of your choice to kind of help cap. And then another very important role here is the damage taken recouped as life. This is very important because when we talk about demon form, we're going to be dealing damage to ourselves, and this is going to help us stay alive. The next thing is hard to kill. We anoint hard to kill on here. This is going to give us 40% increased flask recovery rate and regenerate life per second. So we are going to be a quote unquote flask build to some degree, which we'll talk about in the passive tree. The last gear piece is the helmet. Again, you just want increases to energy shield. I do have a mana roll. I tried to avoid it. And then resistances just to help cap. This was my previous helmet, which would give me more energy shield. You can see my energy shield actually go up from 6175 to 6488. But my lightning res and cold res aren't capped, so I didn't like that too much. So I wanted those to be capped. But a helmet like this would be just fine with rarity. You could put rarity in here as well instead of having like extra fire damage. You don't necessarily need that, but rarity would be really good. Last but not least is the belt. Try to get a fine belt. This is going to make the build feel a lot better with the flask gain charges per second. Again, I have a low mana roll on here. If you do have really good gear and it does have mana or maximum life, try to get the lowest possible rolls you can for this build to actually work. All reses, as you guys can see there, to help cap. And then the two next important ones is increased flask recovery rate and reduced flask charges used. I believe that's the big one on there. Reduced flask charges used. I don't have that one, but the higher those numbers are would actually work. So that's the gear, guys. Very cheap. The gems in here, the runes. You want the vision rune, which is going to give 10% increased life and mana recovery from flask. So it adds even more. I got to put both of these in there. I just haven't yet. But that's the gear, guys. On the Ghost Tattered Robe, you want to have the soul cores that give resistances to help cap. Now, I will tell you this. This did cost a little bit of currency. So if you can't get the corruption of the 60% maximum life, that's fine. You can keep the 50% maximum life converted. And instead of using resistance soul cores, I would put in the soul cores that give you damage reduction or damage taken recouped as life. Soul cores, those are probably the best. All right, now let's talk about these stats real quick before we get into the gems, because the gems are very particular. Now, with these stats, you need to have the lowest strength you possibly can for the lowest life, like I talked about. You want to have at least 133 dexterity. The biggest reason for this is because we're rocking Alchemist Boon at level 14, and it requires 133 dex to actually use. This is very important because it gives us recovery from our flasks and gives us increased flask charges per second. Next, you want to have at least 177 intelligence at the bare minimum, but obviously as you continue to level up, these numbers will increase. So you want to have a bare minimum of that at 84. So once you hit those stat thresholds, then we can come over here into gear. So again, we're going to be in demon form. Demon form is going to give us increased cast speed plus to level of all skills. Or we're going to lose life per second, and we deal increased spell damage per demon flame. So the lose percent life per second is one of the biggest reasons why we want to have the lowest possible life total. 0.5% of 326 total life is very, very low. So this is very, very low. It's not dealing a whole lot of damage to us when we consider our 24% damage taken recouped as life, and then we also have a jewel which does the same thing. So we're actually at 28 total percent damage taken as recouped as life. It is over 8 seconds, but 0.5% of 326 is very, very low. On demon form, same thing. Like that's why that's there, and that's why we need to make sure that we have the lowest life total so we're not dealing a crap ton of damage to ourselves. The next thing is Barrier Evocation. This is where we're going to be doing all our damage through. Now, I do want to preface this. This is very, very important because I had such a hard time trying to figure out the math for the energy gained in order to spam our comet. Your comet gem, as well as barrier evocation, have to be level 19. This build does not work. The build does work if they're not 19. However, you do have to spam your hypothermia or frostbite, depending on which one you want to use, in between the casts of barrier evocation. So when you cast it, you'll be able to cast it 1 to 3 times, and then you won't generate enough energy to just spam it, as you guys saw in the intro of the video. So once you get these to 19, then you will generate it, so you can see you can just instantly spam, and you will not have to do frostbite ever again, except for the buildup at the very beginning of your run. So make sure that barrier evocation is quality. This is very important. Now, barrier evocation says when we hit, we gain 1 energy for each 5 energy shield lost to damage taken, and then we're going to gain all this energy in order to be able to spam our comets. So how do we deal damage to ourselves? Well, in demon form, we are losing life, but then how do we actually take damage? So over in our Ascendancy with Infernalist, we have Pyromantic Pact. This is where we're going to be able to deal damage to ourselves. Pyromantic Pact replaces our mana with Infernal Flame. When we fill our Infernal Flame to the top, we're going to ignite ourselves and deal damage. So as an example, when I build this up, okay, you're going to see me, I'm on fire, and I take damage, and I'm losing my shield, as you guys can see here. So as I'm losing that shield, I'm going to build up a bunch of energy for barrier evocation, and that's what's allowing me to spam my meteors. So my potion refills my energy shield. So now if we go into demon form, right? So now I can just spam this because I generate enough energy to just spam this infinitely. You can see my energy gain is just there, and I have enough energy shield in order to just I can move along and just kind of tap this, because my energy reshield charge rate is so high, or my regen is so high, that I don't have to worry about it, right? Now, there is going to be times where I can spam and do more very, very quickly, but you can see my energy shield going down even more. So barrier evocation with Comet is where we're going to be dealing our damage, and level 19 allows us to make enough spirit to farm. Now, the reason that we're able to spam it infinitely is because once we build up enough, our energy gained from the damage we deal to ourselves is enough to fill up our Infernal Flame, which allows me to cast this. So we need to fill up Infernal Flame. Now, where people get caught in the calculations is because before, at level 18, you don't make enough energy to fill up the Infernal Flame meter. So that's why we want our mana to be as low as possible. So that way, when we do go to cast Comet with barrier evocation, it generates enough energy, which happens to be more than my 781 Infernal Flame. So that way, every time I cast barrier evocation, it fills it and then gives me enough energy to keep casting. So if they're below level 19, you cannot do this. It doesn't matter. You could try to go into all of the gem slots that we have in the build and put in increased meta gems. I think I have one. For meta skills, gain 15% increased energy. You could add more of these, but that's going to weaken the build because we need as much flash charges and flash recovery as possible to sustain our energy shield. So that's barrier evocation with Comet. I don't have Comet actually quality. You could definitely do this for the increased crit. It does help out in the damage. I just need to do it. I just haven't done it yet. After that, with Comet, in demon form, we're doing Ingenuity for the cooldown recovery rate with second wind. So we have 2 charges. If for some reason you lose your energy shield and you kind of come out of demon form, you can just pop it again and you're good to go. In barrier evocation, we want Capacitor, which gives us increased maximum energy. And then we're doing Spell Echo for more Comets, as well as considered casting. If I do get the last gem slot, I'm going to add another damage node on here, but right now we don't need it. You can do this with just 4, which is perfectly fine. Next is Alchemist Boon. You want this at level 14, for that way we can get the most % recovery from flasks, and the recharges per second, you want to quality this. Now, you're probably asking, well, why don't you want it higher? If we get a higher level spirit gem for Alchemist Boon, it's going to require more dex, and we just don't have the dexterity points right now. So we can eventually maybe increase this as we continue to gain more levels, but right now at level 84, 14 is perfect. In here, we're going to do Herbalism. This is just going to give us 30% increased recovery from Life Flask while a supported skill is active. So it just helps us with our energy shield. Now, that's really it for all the spells. The next one is Hypothermia, because we are dealing combats with cold damage. And I have Heightened Curse to increase the support of this. You want this at 14. The main reason you want this at 14 is because it costs 143 mana. So when you're in Infernal Flame, when you cast Hypothermia, it builds this up really quickly, and then we can just spam no problem. And then it's no big deal, and I never have to cast this again. So that's why you want Hypothermia there at level 14. You don't need to take it any higher. Now, as far as the rest of the spirit that we actually have, if I take Arctic Armor out, you don't really need the additional spirit in your amulet. The spirit could be like, you know, Magic Find if you want. Rarity, it's up to you. I like it because having Arctic Armor is kind of nice, or if you want to do run Grim Feast to add even more shield, that's really nice. It really kind of makes the survivability of the build feel really good, but you're dealing so much damage, it doesn't necessarily matter. I like Arctic Armor, that's good, or you can do Grim Feast, it doesn't really matter. In Arctic Armor, you can go with the highest. We're doing Deep Freeze, Glaciation, and Cold Mastery. So if we do happen to get hit, or like you're fighting a boss or something, then this can really help deal some more damage, which is nice. But yeah, guys, those are the skills. That's all you have to run. That's why I like my bar. If we just like put all these on here, it makes it actually look cool. So that's the gear. That's the skills. Let's go over to the tree. Now, on our Ascendancy, we're taking Pyromantic Pact. Okay, this is what makes this Infernal Flame happen. We are also taking Demon Form. We need that. We're taking Altered Flesh. So 20% of our cold and lightning get converted to fire damage, and then 20% of physical get converted to chaos. This is the main reason why that we have our resistances capped, particularly chaos, and my fire res is very high. I will tell you that you need to get your fire res. This number here needs to read 80%. 80% is going to be the threshold that you really need to hit. Mine's 79 and it works right now, but that's because I don't have one jewel yet. I don't have it, but for right now, 79% will work just fine. Your fire res needs to be the absolute highest because we're dealing fire damage to ourselves with Altered Flesh, and then when we ignite ourselves through Infernal Flame, we're dealing fire damage to ourselves again. So we need to have this as the absolute highest. Of course, in here we get some life nodes, some spell damage, more mana that we can't really help that. The increased crit chance is nice, and then we have Grinning Immolation. So when we become ignited, we deal a critical hit to the enemy, taking 15% of our life and energy shield as fire damage per second. But we deal more crit damage. If you do not want to use this, you do not have to. It's perfectly fine. Just take it off. It's not that big of a deal. It's just as a way to deal more damage. If you're having issues sustaining your shield and life, then just take this off, and you do not need it. I would not put it anywhere else. Like, you don't want any more mana, right? You don't want any more life, so you just leave it absolutely blanked. If you really wanted to, you could take it actually off and put it here for more spell damage. That might actually be pretty good. So you could do that. So those are our points. When you're first putting this together, you're going to take just the increased small nodes. Take all these first until you get stuff together. Then you can add in Demon Form, Altered Flesh, Pyromantic Pact, and Grinning Immolation. Now let's go through the rest of the tree. At 84, this tree is very optimized for what we have, including our jewels for now. We got some small improvements to make, but for right now, this really, really works. So initially, when you hit 80, you're going to take these points here and come up this way to connect. When you hit 84, you're going to be able to take these points in here for increased maximum energy shield through the entire thing. We're taking pretty much everything that we can to increase our energy shield. So we're taking Melding for more energy shield, reduce mana. We're going to come up and we're going to come over here and we're going to take Illuminating Crown as well as Heavy Buffer. We're going to come up all the way over. We're taking Patient Barrier as well as Ingenuity for more intelligence. We're going to come up here. We're going to take these increased energy gain nodes. You do not need energize. If you want it, you can, but you do not need it. We're going to come all the way across. We're going to take more energy nodes here. And then this is where the build works when I say we are a flask build. We take Eternal Youth. So life recharges instead of our energy shield, and life recovery from flasks applies to energy shield instead, which is why going more south into our tree, we're taking every single thing we can for life recovery with flasks. So we got charges gained, chance to not consume. We're taking our points here down. We're going to come over and we're going to grab Hail Traveler for more life recovery. We're going to come down here some more all the way up here. We're going to grab Potent Concoctions as well as Lasting Concoctions for more charges, more duration, increased effect. All of this. We're going to come down again. We're going to come over and grab Life Flasks here just for increased charges gained and more recovery. Then we're going to come grab Oasis for cannot use charms, 30% more recovery from flasks. We cannot use these. We're going to take this for more recovery, and then we're taking these nodes for more recovery in here. So when I look on the character sheet, I have a maximum energy shield in here. If I turn on Demon Flame and we kind of spam this and I go into my character, you can see I have 6,000 energy shield recovery per second, which is great. We have 623 total life recovery per second, including the damage taken, which is why you see my shield just constantly recharging, no problem, as I'm just kind of tapping my mouse button here. If you do run low, then you just hit your potion. It makes it better, and you are good to go. Now, also in the passive tree, so the tree itself is very, very good. It's very efficient, and the build just works. Now, once we're getting past, we're going to come up and take Energy Shield, Recharge, Regeneration Rate. We're going to get up to Soul Bloom, which is just going to make it even better. Now, the jewels that you need for this build are very important and very particular. We have 2 rubies here, which are very important, which give us maximum fire resistance. This is how we are going to get up to that 80%. Now, there is a jewel here that we're going to get. It's a unique jewel. I can't remember the name. But it's going to make all of the big nodes in here, these 3, give us at least 1% maximum fire res, which is we'll take this 1% more higher to 80. So you get one of these. Your next ruby needs to be the same thing. 2% maximum fire res. Any other mods on them, we don't really care for rubies. None of them are necessarily good. Just make sure you don't get increased life. Now, for all of our emeralds, we want the following 2. Increased flask effect duration and increased life recovery from flasks. These 2 are the most important. These things max at 15%. I have a little bit less. I think I got 12% in almost all of them. So it's a stepping stone. The 15% is very expensive. So I got 12s, which is a lot cheaper. But these are the 2 most important affixes on here, life recovery and flask effect. Any other ones are just bonuses. So like on this one, I think I just have the 2. This one, again, we have increased attack damage, doesn't really do anything. On this one here, we have increased magnitude of poison and damage with quarterstaffs. Those don't matter. And that's it. The very last jewel, you only need 1 sapphire, at least for now. The increased spell damage is really nice, but the 2 most important that you have to have is damage taken, recouped as life, and meta skills gain 15% energy. I cannot stress enough that the damage taken needs to be at 4% and the meta skills needs to be at 15%. This jewel, I think, cost, it was pretty expensive to get this one, so this might be the most expensive jewel that you get, but it's essential for the build to make sure it works correctly. All right? So now that we're through gems, the passive tree is all set. Okay, we're good to go at 84. We'll be taking the next 3 points into Soul Bloom next, but that is it, guys. We're eventually going to come down here and probably get Waters of Life. We don't need Mana Flasks, actually. We just need to get the extra mana recovery here, which is why we have Iron or Vision Runes in our gear pieces. Now, one additional thing, you can see that I don't have a rune in here. I have everything capped, so this could be another Vision rune, you could put in an iron rune for more energy shield if you really wanted to. I'm considering putting energy shield here, but you definitely need to have at least one vision rune in your gloves and one in your helmet, or if you get a 2 helmet, put 2 in here and then leave the glove one open, and then you're set. So I'm considering what to put into here just to gain some more energy shield, but we are going to stack that really, really high. Make sure you quality absolutely everything. On my amulet, I quality life with catalyst to increase the damage recouped. On the breach ring, I did elements, so fire to make the fire res. On here, we did life again to reduce life. And then on here is obviously just your normal stuff. We do not run a weapon or offhand. We do not need it because we're going to be in demon form the entire time. Now, with that said, let's go ahead and go through the build and just how it works. Just real briefly, we're going to use hypothermia when you first pop into a map. We're going to use hypothermia to build up our inner flame. We're going to immediately transform into demon mode, and we're going to just fill that up, and then we can start spamming. And you can see how fast we are with the dash, which is great. And then the build is just that. Like, if I'm just tapping, right, like I have so much regeneration, I just should not have to do anything for this. Now, you do want to make sure you're tapping your flasks, you know, every couple of seconds, unless you're really spamming like crazy. But you should have no issues with any kind of content that you want to do in the game. Now, I will tell you, since I just put this build together at 84, T15s and T16s, very, very easy to do in this build. I can destroy all the map bosses, no problem. I have not gone and tested it on the other bosses. I'm going to do that, but I just haven't tested it yet because we just got the build together, and I wanted to put the video together just to kind of showcase to you guys so that way you guys can go put this together if you really want to. Now, one thing I will add to this as you guys are seeing me walk through this gameplay is GGG is back. They're fixing a lot of bugs right now. So after that, I can assume that they are going to do some kind of nerfing and balancing and or buffing to other things. This is something that may get nerfed, or I wouldn't say buffed, but this is something that could potentially be nerfed. So if you are weary about that, I spent about 7 divs, I think 6 or 7 divs putting this build together last night. So if you are concerned about that, and cool, we got 2 breaches in this map, sick. So if you are concerned about that, then definitely don't put this together. But if you want to try it, it's great, and you'll really, really enjoy it. Let's go ahead and do the breach so you guys can kind of see that. The build and flying around as a demon is just so cool. Like, you guys, like, you just destroy everything. Like, you just destroy everything. You can be really, really fast at clearing. Now, I do also want to add in, you do not have to use Comet. You can use things like Arc. You could use Spark. You could use... Oh, I died. You could use whatever skill you wanted. It's not a big deal. Just be wary of that. It says I committed suicide. The reason I committed suicide is because I let my energy shield actually go down. So make sure you're spamming. That's a good example for the video. Make sure you're... Every second or two, you're spamming your pots. Because you're going to get so many charges, it's not going to matter. The last and final piece to this build, guys, I know it's a long video, but I hope this helps. You need to get a flask like this, okay? You need life, increased life recovery. Anything over 90% works. You need the removes 15% of life recovered from mana. We don't have mana. And then you need the gain charges per second. Okay, make sure you get one just like this. Make sure you quality it, and you'll be able to spam your potions, no problem. Like I said, like when you're doing this and you're like spamming, like you're gonna make so many charges because one, you're getting charges from killing monsters, and then you're getting charges just naturally from the recovery of like our belt, our passive nodes, and just our gear, which just makes getting potions really, really easy. I should have just been queuing there. That sucks because that map had double breaches, but that's okay. But yeah, guys, this is Infernalist Comet Spam. It is absolutely fantastic, and I love it. It is so, so fun. So I just got to get used to playing the build some more. But like the video, guys. comment down below. If you guys have any questions at all, feel free to ask me. I will answer all of them and hope that it'll help you make this build. I will have all of my exact gear down in the planner below. So if you guys have any questions about exactly what I have, you guys can reference the video, or you can just ask me or check out the planner. So yeah, guys, that's the build. Like, comment, help me out with the algorithm. Don't forget to subscribe, guys. And as always, stay gaming. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.